Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a developing and frankly deeply tragic story out of California. We're looking at the devastating crash of a B-52 bomber at Edwards Air Force Base. To really grasp the full scope of what happened here, we need to understand exactly what went wrong, where it unfolded, and just how legendary the aircraft involved actually is. Let's start with the immediate aftermath. Picture this, a massive, thick plume of black smoke just billowing high up over the Mojave Desert this past Monday. It was right around 11:20 a.m. local time. What was completely supposed to be just a routine test mission ended in absolute disaster. A U.S. Air Force B-52 bomber crashed and burst into flames almost instantly after takeoff. Just the sheer scale of that smoke, which you could literally see for miles, gave everyone their first grim indication of just how severe this impact was. And guys, this brings us to the absolute hardest part of this story, the number 8. After base authorities reviewed the initial footage, they had to make a really sobering call very quickly. The crash was deemed completely unsurvivable. So, we have the incredibly tragic task of reporting the loss of all 8 individuals who are on board that aircraft on Monday morning. Now, you might be wondering, who exactly was on that flight? Because this wasn't just your standard military crew. The 8 folks on board actually represented a huge cross-section of the defense and aviation world. We're talking a mixed crew of military personnel, government civilians, government contractors, and notably, Boeing actually conferred that 2 of their own employees were on the plane. Having this diverse group really highlights the collaborative nature of these test flights. They bring together all these different experts to test out new tech. Right after it happened, emergency vehicles completely swarmed a charred, smoking section of the runway. Because the crash happened right there on the base's airfield, authorities were able to take immediate action. They completely locked things down, they halted all base operations, diverted any incoming flights somewhere else, and just totally shut off non-commercial visitor access. The number one priority in those chaotic first few minutes was, of course, the emergency response and getting the site secured. All right, part 1, the location. Edwards Air Force Base. If you look at a map, Edwards is pinpointed right in the heart of California's Mojave Desert. It's about 100 miles north of Los Angeles. And this remote, harsh environment, it's completely by design. It gives them the vast, empty airspace they absolutely need to push experimental and modernized aircraft to their absolute limits. It's truly a critical hub for American military aviation. More specifically, Edwards is home to the 412th Test Wing. And the big takeaway here is that this isn't just some standard operational base where planes take off and land for normal patrols. Not at all. This place is a major, dedicated center for testing Air Force aircraft, cutting-edge weapons, software, you name it. Basically, if the Air Force is flying it, the 412th Test Wing is probably pushing it to the breaking point to see what it can handle. You know, this base is literally legendary in aviation history. Today, sure, it's this hub for testing new stuff like radar modernization. But get this. Back in 1947, this was the exact spot where test pilot Chuck Yeager officially broke the sound barrier. But that rich history is kind of a double-edged sword, right? It's a reminder of amazing triumphs, but it also really highlights the everyday risks. Pushing the absolute limits of flight technology is incredibly dangerous work, whether you're doing it in 1947 or today. Moving on to part 2, the aircraft, the incredibly iconic B-52 Stratofortress. Meet the Boeing B-52. Now, if you're in the aviation loop, you probably know this massive plane by its nickname, the Buff. And this thing is a total behemoth. What's absolutely wild is that it has been a primary, long-range strategic bomber for the U.S. military for more than 7 decades. It first entered service all the way back in 1955. It was literally the nuclear umbrella during the Cold War and has been used in everything from Vietnam to modern-day tensions with Iran. Let's break down some specs just to wrap our heads around the scale of this thing. The B-52 can haul a staggering 70,000 pounds of payload, conventional bombs, nuclear cruise missiles, the whole shebang. It flies way up there at 50,000 feet, which is much higher than your typical commercial flight. And with mid-air refueling, its range is effectively unlimited. But take a look at that typical crew metric. A standard B-52 usually flies with just 5 people. So the fact that there were 8 individuals on this specific flight tells us this was a highly specialized mission that required extra engineers or observers on board. So what exactly was that mission? Well, officials have confirmed that the specific B-52 involved in Monday's tragedy was actively supporting the base's ongoing radar modernization program. Basically, they were out there testing brand new systems meant to bring this 70-year-old airframe squarely into the modern era of electronic warfare. Which brings us to part 3, The investigation ahead. With the flames finally put out, the military's initial assessment has been incredibly somber. Colonel James Hayes, the deputy commander over at Edwards, delivered this really stark statement. He said, after reviewing initial footage, the incident has been deemed an unrecoverable crash and unsurvivable. The damage was so absolute that aerial images showed basically no visible remains of the massive bomber. So what on earth causes an unrecoverable crash mere moments after takeoff? Aviation safety expert Jeff Gazzetti had some critical insight on this. He pointed out that how incredibly fast the plane came down strongly points to what he calls a controllability issue. But the exact trigger? That's the huge mystery right now. Was it an engine failure? Did the flight controls physically jam? Or was it some glitch tied to the new radar equipment they were testing? We just don't know yet. Gazzetti also hit on something we absolutely have to remember here. Flight testing is inherently dangerous. Even on an ultra-reliable 70-year-old plane like the B-52, the minute you start bolting on brand new, completely unproven testing systems, your risk profile shoots way up compared to everyday military operations. That's exactly why they have specialized test pilots and super strict safety protocols. But tragically, you just can't eliminate the risk entirely. Look, getting to the bottom of a crash like this is not going to be quick. Officials have mapped out a really rigorous, methodical timeline. While containing the scene happens in a matter of hours, the preliminary investigations alone are going to take up to 30 days. And they are warning us that getting a final, definitive cause could easily take more than 6 months. They literally have to sift through scattered debris, flight data, and dense maintenance records to find out the truth. So we want to leave you with this final thought. As we mourn the 8 lives lost in the Mojave and wait for answers from the investigators, we really have to ask ourselves, what is this tragedy going to reveal about that incredibly delicate balance between advancing our military technology and the very real human cost of flight testing? It's a heavy question for sure, and one the aviation community is going to be grappling with for a long time. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. If you found this helpful, please like, share, and subscribe so we can keep bringing you clear explainers on the events shaping our world.